What's up, family? Hit the like button, share the video, subscribe to the channel. Let's get into this because I'm gonna be honest with you. There are some headlines that you read and you just have to stop for a second to take it all in. And this is one of those headlines as you guys see on the screen. This is one of those moments where everything you've been saying for years, everything that felt obvious to you, everything that regular people have been pointing out while the so-called experts were on television telling you that you didn't understand how things work. It all comes full circle in one single news story, and that story is John Bolton pleading guilty to a felony count of illegal retention of sensitive national security information. And we're going to break this down. We're going to walk through exactly what he did, and we're going to look at what he was saying publicly while he was doing it. And then we're going to talk about what the shift at the Department of Justice means going forward, because this isn't just one man. This is about whether the rules in this country actually apply to everybody or just to the people who don't have the right connections and the right title in front of their name.
The president had a habit of asking to retain sensitive documents. And from time to time, he did that, and we didn't know what happened to them. And it was always a concern that because he didn't really fully understand the risks to sources and methods and other dangers of revealing classified information, that it might get out to the wrong people.
So let's start with who John Bolton actually is for anyone who might not be fully up to speed, because this is important context. John Bolton was the National Security Advisor of the United States. And what that means in plain English is that he was one of the most senior officials in the entire country when it came to understanding classified information, protecting national secrets, and knowing the rules around sensitive government documents. This wasn't a mid-level employee who maybe didn't fully understand the procedures. This was a man who spent decades in Washington, who sat at the highest levels of government, who went on television regularly, as you guys can see, as an expert commentator to explain to the public how classified information works and why mishandling it is so dangerous. So when we talk about what he did, we're not talking about someone who made an innocent mistake out of ignorance. We're talking about someone who knew the rules better than almost anyone in this country. And here's what prosecutors say he actually did. He withheld more than 1,000 pages of material about his day-to-day activities in government, and he kept classified documents at his home in Maryland, and he used his personal email account to share that sensitive material with two unauthorized individuals. And when I tell you to think about what that actually means in real world terms, think about it like this. Imagine you work at a hospital and your job is to protect patient records, and you've been doing this for 30 years, and you go on the news every other week to explain to the people why leaking patient information is dangerous and wrong, and then it comes out that you've been taking thousands of patient files home, storing them in your house and emailing them to people who have no business seeing them. People would have a very serious, people would have very serious questions, I should say, about your character and your judgment. And this is exactly the situation we're looking at with John Bolton, because this is the same man, the exact same man who sat in front of cameras and told the American public that Donald Trump had a habit, as you guys heard in this clip here that I just played on the screen. Donald Trump had a habit of retaining sensitive documents and that he worried about classified information getting to the wrong people. And what makes this so hard to look past is that while he was saying those things on television, while he was positioning himself as the person who understood the risk better than the president, he was already doing something far worse in his own personal life. And when you look at this clip of him explaining Trump's behavior, talking about how Trump didn't fully understand the risk to sources and methods and how that information could get to the wrong people, you have to sit with the fact that the wrong people in Bolton's own case were people in his personal circle. People who had no government clearance, no need to see that information, no legal right to have it, and he sent them anyway through a personal email account. And that is the part that makes this story about more than just one man's legal trouble, because what this shows is a definition of holding other people to a standard that you never intended to live by yourself. He knew the rules, he taught the rules to the public, he used the rules as a weapon in a court of public opinion, and then behind closed doors, he made the choice to not follow them. And now here's where it gets even more interesting, because it wasn't just one comment he made. Now, Bolton didn't just make one comment about Trump and classify information and leave it there. because he also went on camera and called the federal indictment against Trump a devastating and powerful indictment. And he said that the way it was put together, the way it was focused and targeted, meant that as a matter of law, it was going to be very difficult for Trump to resist. And he said all of that with confidence. He said it like a man who understood the legal system, like a man who had studied the situation and arrived at a clear conclusion. And I need you to think about what it means that those same legal standards, that same framework he was describing on television, are now the exact same framework being applied to him. So I want you guys to check that out.
Well, I think it's a devastating indictment. It's very powerful in the way that it's portrayed, but it's also very narrow, very targeted. The government didn't throw everything in the kitchen sink at the wall. It has focused this in a way that I think, as a matter of law, is going to be very difficult for the president to resist. I think the real question is the question of timing and scheduling. You know, if Donald Trump were an honest man, if he were an innocent man, he'd be saying, I want the trial within 30 days. I want this cloud removed from over my head. I want this stain on my reputation removed. So we'll wait and see what Donald Trump does. I think he'll try and postpone it to after the 2024 election. So my suggestion to Jack Smith and the Justice Department is go lean on the Manhattan District Attorney and get him to move his trial until after the election. This trial should take precedence. We'll find out whether Alvin Bragg is a real prosecutor or a political hack. The answer to their complaint about a double standard, the question they should be asked is, even though Biden has escaped scot-free, Clinton has escaped scot-free, fill in the blank has escaped scot-free, is the answer to the double standard to let Donald Trump escape scot-free? Is the answer to the double standard to revert to no standard at all? I think that's wrong.
So there you have it. Because the plea he agreed to, when I'm talking about John Bolton, isn't some technicality. It's a felony. And the conduct, prosecutors described it, this kind of conduct he was publicly saying should disqualify other people from leadership. So when you ask yourself whether this is justice or politics, I'm not here to tell you what to think, but I will say this: if the standard is the standard based on what he just said, then the standard has to apply to everybody. And for a long time in Washington, that has simply not been the case. And that is the deeper issue here, because this isn't really about John Bolton, the individual. This is about whether regular working people in this country can actually trust that the justice system sees them the same way it sees someone with decades of government experience and a title in a cable news contributor contract. And for a long time, the honest answer to that question has been no. And people felt that. They felt it in their communities. They talked about it at the kitchen table. And now we're at least starting to see some movement in a different direction. And a big part of that movement is the leadership change at the Department of Justice, because acting Attorney General Todd Blanche is now being nominated by President Trump for the permanent role.
Todd's doing a very good job at DOJ.
Will he be Attorney General, or have you decided?
I think he will, yeah.
You haven't got someone else in mind?
No.
Not Ron DeSantis?
I wanted to see how he's received. You know, we put him as acting, and he's done a very good job. But I've known him a long time.
Someone mentioned Ron DeSantis might be in the mix to be
Ron's
Attorney General.
No, Ron's very good. Ron's very good. I mean, you know, people have thought of different names. There are some good names. No, I had never thought, Ron never talked about, you know, he's a governor doing a good job. But Ron's good. He's a friend of mine. Just named an airport after me. You know, they named the Palm Beach International Airport, the President Donald J. Trump.
Well, you use it all the time.
International Airport.
Yeah.
Right, so that's a great honor, you know.
Yeah.
No, there are a lot of great people. The Republican Party, we have great people.
So are you happy with the pace of what the Department of Justice is doing? There's so much trying to find out.
Well, much more
Antifa.
so now than at the beginning.
Yeah.
They are, there's a lot of things going on right now.
There's a lot of problems inside.
Look, we had a rigged election.
So you seen that, you heard that. So let me explain in plain English what that actually means. The Attorney General is essentially the top law enforcement officer in the entire country. They set the tone for how the Department of Justice operates. They decide what the priorities are. They determine which cases get pursued and with how much energy. So when the person in that seat changes, the whole direction of federal law enforcement can change with them. And Trump confirmed on camera that Blanche is his pick. And he explained it simply. He said he wanted to see how Blanche handled things in an acting capacity first. That is what essentially is an audition, basically. And that based on what he's seen over the past couple of months, he's satisfied with the direction things are going in. The Bolton plea is one of the early signals of exactly what that direction looks like. Because when you have a new leader at the Department of Justice who is willing to pursue cases regardless of how connected or credentialed the person on the other end is, it starts to reveal something that has been broken for a long time. And that something is institutional trust, because when people believe the system only works for certain people, they stop trusting the system entirely. And you can't have a functioning constitutional republic when half the country believes the referees are only calling fouls on one team. So accountability at the top level matters for everybody, not just for political reasons, but for practical ones. And Blanche is also making moves at other levels too, because just recently the Department of Justice launched a major fraud crackdown in Ohio. 14 people charged in a $50 million scheme. And one part of that case involves two state employees and co conspirators who allegedly billed the government $30 million for services that were never even provided. And I need you to understand what that money actually is. That is taxpayer money. That is money that came out of the pockets of working people and was supposed to go towards real programs of real services for real families. And when that money gets stolen, it doesn't just disappear into thin air. It means someone who needed a service didn't get it. And it means a program that was supposed to help a community got gutted from the inside. So when the Department of Justice goes after fraud at every level, from Washington insiders mishandling classified documents all the way down to state employees stealing from government programs, it sends one clear message. And that message is that the standard is the standard for everybody. And that brings me to the bigger takeaway here, as I would say.
Today we're announcing charges that were either unsealed today or over the past week against 14 defendants allegedly involved in fraud schemes targeting over $50 million here in Ohio. And again, these numbers are staggering, but just the tip of the iceberg, both here in Ohio and nationwide. Sadly, Ohio is facing some of the most significant fraud schemes in the country. Medicare fraud, pandemic relief fraud, even an international romance fraud scheme that I think you'll hear about shortly. And to meet this challenge, to meet this crisis, our response has been and will continue to be aggressive, comprehensive, and we will not stop until we fix this problem. I want to emphasize something about what the cases that we're bringing represent: a unified, statewide fraud-fighting effort that's firing on all cylinders. You're going to hear from some of us today after I finish, the U.S. attorneys, federal investigative partners, state partners, and agencies that are going to move fast, they're going deep, and we're delivering results for the American people.
There you have it. So the big takeaway here, I want you to really walk away with is, because at the end of all of this, the Bolton story and the Ohio fraud crackdown and the Blanche nomination, the through line connecting all of this is one simple idea. And the idea is that a justice system that doesn't apply equally to everyone isn't actually a justice system at all. It's just power dressed up in legal language. And for years, if we're being honest with each other, powerful people in Washington operated with a level of protection that regular working people never had access to. If you or I had done what prosecutors said Bolton did, if we had taken sensitive work documents home, stored them in our house, and emailed them to people who had no right to see them, there would be no debate about what happens next year. There will be no drawn out public conversation about fairness. You will face the consequences full stop, and that gap between how the system treated the connected and how it treated everybody else is exactly what eroded people's trust in institutions over the past 2 decades. And what we're watching right now is at least the beginning of that gap closing. And I want to be careful because I'm not standing here telling you this is fixed or that the work is done. I'm saying there are early signs that the standard is being applied more evenly than it has been. And that matters because a constitutional republic, and I mean that in the most basic, plain English sense possible, a system of government where laws are supposed to protect everyone equally, only works when the people inside it actually believe the rules apply to them too. So equal justice under the law isn't just something carved into the front of a building. It's supposed to be the operating principle of the whole system. And when it breaks down at the top, it sends a message all the way to the bottom that the rules are just suggestions for some people. And now there is a scripture that keeps coming back. When you look at it in a story like this in Galatians chapter 6, verse 7, says, "Do not be deceived. God cannot be mocked, and a man reaps what he sows." And I'm not bringing that in to be preachy. I'm bringing it in because it's true. It is plain statement of how consequences work in real life. Your title doesn't protect you from what you put out into the world. Your television appearances don't protect you. Your connections don't protect you. And what we're seeing play out right now is a real world example of that truth in action. And I want to be clear that this isn't about celebrating anybody's personal downfall. It's not what this channel is about. What this is about is understanding that a system that holds the powerful accountable is the same system that protects you and your family, because the standard that catches someone at the top is the exact same standard that shields the people at the bottom. And this is worth paying attention to. So let me know what you think in the comments. Do you believe this is a real shift towards accountability, or is it too early to call it? I genuinely want to hear your perspective. Let me know down in the comments below. On that note, family, hit the like button, share the video, subscribe to the channel, turn on your push notifications. Catch you in the next one. Peace.